Okay. Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Thursday at 6:30 Central, 5:30 if you're somewhere else, and 7:30 if you're somewhere else. And if
And
you're around the
off by a
world,
half
it's
an hour. It's actually off by a half an hour if you're in India.
oh
That's
wow,
They're offset
yeah.
by a half hour.
And if you're listening to this in the future, then obviously you're not here at this time. So anyway, welcome back to another show of the Author's Dilemma. It is our 12th show, which you know, it's kind of funny because this all started off like just a random idea. We were on Discord together. I'm like, hey guys, you know what we should do? We should start a podcast. And they were like, yes, let's do this. And so here we are, just kind of winging it as we go. And I think we've gotten better over time. The critiques say we are all one of them, and we really appreciate that. So tonight, well, first off, is there any news? Oh, first off, we got to introduce ourselves. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
Here I am, the 12th show, and I'm still, hey, if I had a wing, it would be flapping. I'm winging it. I'm J.E. Jack. I write urban fantasy and paranormal thrillers.
And I'm Hyrum Hawks. I write hard sci-fi and sci-fantasy.
And I'm Jennifer Carr, and I write Christian romantic suspense as well as clean contemporary romance.
Yes, and we're very happy that you're here with us tonight. If you are watching, be sure to say hello. Tell us where you're watching from. If you have any questions tonight, we will love to answer those. Do we have any news? Is there any newsworthy items this week in the whole writing world? I really didn't see anything too crazy.
No, it's a pretty boring week on TikTok and Twitter and
I don't know.
Things are called
Book
threads.
Talk. There's some drama going around on Book Talk,
is
and
there?
this is
Do tell.
one of those things that I just roll my eyes because it's like stay in your lane. But so Book Talk, I think, was started as it was supposed to be like an all female or a mostly female community kind of thing, and now there are men who are trying to weasel their way into Book Talk and make themselves the fictional men that are in the romance books and that kind of thing. And so all the girls are getting upset that there are boys trying to play on their playground. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then there are men who are like, hey, y'all need to stop reading the smut and all this. Anyway, it's drama for the sake of drama, I think.
I'm never going to be a fan of smut, but that's not necessarily for any reason other than I've seen some psychological literature about it, so that's all I'll put. Read the literature.
Right. I don't know. I just think it's funny that people get upset that you can't read that. You need to stop reading that. And I'm like, well, maybe you need to stop reading about your robots that you're falling in love with, whatever, anyway. But that's really the only drama that I've seen this week.
That's interesting. And in some circles, I'm sure it's more interesting.
It is for us romance readers and writers. It's kind of one of those things that,
Yeah. All right. So, Hyrum, what's going on in your business? What are you doing this week?
Well, I wrote a short story, like 8,000 words, a couple weeks ago. That I was intending it to go for. It's kind of a double thing for me. I'm writing it for my business to kind of promote this side business I've got to people, but also because I just thought it was a cool story idea. And I was going to make it a short story, and it's kind of evolved because it started, I was going to make it a short story, but I realized it was so dense. And we'll talk about it more today as a new part of my process, but I've already written another like 14,000 words. Actually, no, I think I'm up to 16,000 words on it this week. Where I just took the first section of that and just turned it became an outline, which I've never done before. So kind of a new thing for me.
Okay. And that's the story you shared with us on Discord?
Yes. Well, that's the lunar impact, though. Naming. I will die on the hill that naming is the hardest part of writing.
I thought marketing was the hardest part of writing.
It's all hard.
Marketing is not writing. Marketing is lying to get people to give you money.
No, it's not lying. Sometimes it's like, it's telling people exactly what they need to hear in order for them to. They don't even know that they want it, So you're just telling them, different things about it. Jen, what's going on in your world? What are you accomplishing?
Well, so I started writing book 4 of my current series, and then I decided that I was going to try something a little different this go around. I've always had arc readers, but they were like individually um, sourced. Like I would be like, hey, I'm looking for arc readers, and then I would pick and choose, random arc readers that were available. And I decided that this go around, I'm actually, and from here forward, I'm creating a community of arc readers for the whole series. And so I'm starting a community of arc readers that is literally their job is to fall in love with the series as much as I've fallen in love with the series. And so, and I've already, I'm up to about 10, and we're just kind of working through some stuff. It's new for all of us. We've never done it this way before, but I'm pretty dadgum excited about it.
I've heard of people doing that, but I never imagined doing it myself. So
yeah, it's a trial run. We'll see.
I'd be interested in hearing. I would be interested to hear updates about that, as far as what you've learned, as far as like what's working for creating a group like that versus what's not working, or different pitfalls that you've come across. Because I think that's what as we write, we come across these different ideas that we'd love to try, but since it is so foreign to us, we don't, because we're scared to, or we just don't know what to do next. That's something that I'm learning, as far as all my book launches have not been very well done, because I don't know how to do book launches. And so, hearing you talk about that, that's really an interesting thing. I guess the thing you're going to have to worry about the most, though, is your arc readers knowing your story is better than better than you.
Yes, and then you run into issues like we talked about the other day in our private group about timelines and stuff like that,
which I'm going to talk about here in a second.
Take it apart, and so that's one reason. But I'm that way when I read, though, so I'm pretty confident in my work. But yeah, you're right. Like I want people to be so entrenched in the stories that it's like we're all there together. But at the same time, I'm like, ooh, that's getting a little behind the curtain look, and I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Yes, pay no mind to
that's right.
the writer behind the curtain.
Yeah,
you'll get too close and you'll see what I'm. That's amazing though. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So for me, I am here again. I know I talk about this every week. I have a very limited time as far as time. So I haven't been able to focus on newsletters. But that's going to be the constant thing for the next couple weeks. The newsletter, I gotta start working on that, because I still have problems with the company I was going with previously. So I got to find a new company to do that. Currently, I am 32 chapters out of 38 chapters done with the first cleanup of the first draft. So that's good, but oh my goodness, talking about timelines, I got to the point where I'm cleaning this up and I'm now on the downward spiral of, to the climax of the book. And I realized that I'm off by a day that I've, previously led up to. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, I've got to do some rewriting somewhere. So
time travel.
Yeah. If this is Harry Potter, I would just use that little time thing.
Time
turner. Yeah. But such is life. So that's what is new with me. I should be done with that this weekend, at least with the first rough draft, and then I'll send it to the editor. And I'm using Pro, which we'll talk about tonight, about maybe the different processes that we use. But I'm using ProWrite a lot for that first cleanup, which helps quite a bit. I highly recommend it. All right, so we got that out of the way. Tonight, everyone, we're going to talk about our processes. I know we've kind of glossed over before, and I think it's one of these topics that we'll probably come back to pretty regularly, probably once a quarter, because I think it's important to rehash or go back over some of the topics that we've talked about, because as we're doing this, we learn ourselves what's working, what's not working, and that changes from time to time, because I think as human beings, we are being and we adapt and we overcome, and that's, we learn new things about ourselves, and I think Hyrum's learned new things too. So as far as, he was talking about, outlining and things like that, because I don't know how to do that. But anyway, so that's what we're doing. So guys, tell me what your process is. Who wants to go first? Who wants to talk about themselves? Go ahead.
I'm always ready to talk about myself, but I think that in some ways, every author needs to choose where they land on the chaos versus order spectrum and lean into it. I've on and off done therapy for 25 years because creative types tend to need therapy. And one of the biggest things I learned about myself is that my biggest source of contention with myself is trying to force myself into routines.
Mm-hmm.
So an externally applied routine is fine. If someone else is making me do it, like when I served an LDS mission, it was easy. There's a set schedule which is great for 19 to 21 year olds. When I'm working for different companies, when I was in school, I knew where I needed to be, when I needed to be, and I knew what I needed to do when I needed to do it. Mm-hmm. That doesn't work for the creative types. When we're our own boss, I decided I had to lean into my chaos. And so there are days where I write nothing. Mm-hmm. There are days when the only thing I do is when I take my shower, I come up with crazy ideas and then I write them down and put them to the side. And there are days when I've written as much as 10,000 words in a day. That day was a little overwhelming, but I did it. I did 6,000 just the other day, but I can't do consistency. And so my biggest part of my process is I've accepted. It's almost like I've embraced the chaos that is my creative process. And so I also have embraced the fact I'm never going to write the same book necessarily contiguously. Mm-hmm. I take breaks between books. And so I have technically 5 works in progress that are I have a spreadsheet because of course I do. But
so are you mean you're writing them at the same time, or you're taking, like, what do you mean? Explain that.
They're all, whichever book I feel inspired to do, I do that one next. And so there are times when, of course I call it book organization. There are times when I can, like Valley of Death that I just came out with. Mm-hmm. It just came out in a month. It was chaos, and it just came out in a month. The other 3 books that I had been working on at that time, or the other 2 books that I'd focused on at that time, were kind of just there. But so I have a 40,000 word book right now, a 17,000 word book, a 45,000 word book I'm co-authoring with my sister, an 85,000 word book I want to just completely rewrite because I hate it. My very first novel about a bioengineered ferret, which is still my favorite. Mm-hmm. It was 45,000 words, and I've started rewriting it. And I have 63,000 words on another book. All of them get attention when I feel like it.
Okay, so you write them all at the same time? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Wow.
Though some of them end up getting more attention than others because I'm more inspired on them. Like the Lunar Impact one that I just started, I'm 16,000 words in, and I know everything I want to write. Mm-hmm. To a large extent. It's still going to be very much pantsed in many places. Like I just rewrote the ending in my head.
Right.
Not the ending, but there is another try-fail cycle that I came up with. And that's really what, to me, writing ends up being. I know roughly where I want to go. I don't know which try-fail cycles I'm going to do along the way. And if you don't know what a try-fail cycle is, we definitely should do a whole podcast on that.
Okay, I don't know what they are. Go ahead and explain.
Okay, well, try-fail cycle is... I like how Mary Robinette Kowal teaches it, but basically you try something and it either fails and then you have to try something else, or which is the yes, or which is the no and, or
okay,
yes,
all right,
but.
yeah, all right,
yes,
I understand it.
Yes button, no and. So I like those. That's basically how I write. Is I move from as I come up with those, I add them to the story, and so if I feel inspired with something for one of the 6 other books I'm writing, then I write that one right then.
That's kind of like my reading list. My, I think it's hard enough to read several books at the same time. I couldn't even imagine. I did try once to write 2 books at a time, and it didn't work out for me because I just couldn't do it. I had to.
The chaos. If you are a chaos-brained person, let the chaos be the dominant aspect because you find joy in it. I do not find joy in forcing myself to do one thing at a time. I find the chaos to be relaxing. That doesn't mean I shouldn't have some routine. I mean, I still do need to eat 3 times a day. My stomach says more, but
so Jen, what What are your thoughts on that? What do you do?
I don't think my process for any of my books has been the same back to back. I will say that writing a series has been very different than sitting down and writing a single book. And I didn't know that this was going to be a series when I started the Real American Country series that I'm working on. So literally with this one, it's been like I wrote the first book, went straight into the second book, finished the third book. And then what's really funny is with the fourth book, I wrote the last like 5 chapters first and the epilogue. And now I'm going back and writing chapter 1. And so you just never know. But I agree, like there's not a right or wrong way. And so you just kind of have to lean into what works for your creative flow. And if you don't, you will find yourself more frustrated when you sit there and try to force yourself to work on something that maybe is just not ready to be worked on. Because I will say that once I wrote the last several chapters of book 4, I had to take a couple weeks. Now, granted, I also got sick, and that was my brain didn't work at all, really. But like taking those 2 weeks off and being able to come back to it this week, or really just today, and say, okay, now I can think about this book. I didn't feel like I was forcing anything. And so I think, Hyram's onto something with just lean into it and do what works for your creativity, because we're all going to do it differently.
That's interesting because talking about hitting roadblocks and moving to other ideas. Yeah. Well, first off, and if you don't get anything out of tonight's podcast, the thing you should get the most is just start writing.
Yeah.
Because you will never learn what works until you start putting it to practice. And then by doing it, that's where you start learning. I mean, I can't get that across enough. I wrote a couple different books, and then what's funny is the book I'm almost finishing now, or I'm done with now, I got 90,000 words in on it, and I hit a wall. I hit a wall. I just hated it. I got to the point where I just don't want to work on it anymore. And then I wrote another book. I got so frustrated, and procrastination, set in, that I decided to write another book so I didn't have to finish this one. And I'm glad I did that. I would not recommend, me personally, I would not recommend that for someone that hasn't finished a book.
Yes.
I would say
finish one.
Yeah.
Yes. Prove to yourself
before
that
you find your system.
Yes.
Yeah. And honestly, I would recommend for those that have never written a book before, I would start with writing a scene. Start with writing a short story, a longer story, a novelette. After you complete one, then go to the next one, and try to stretch yourself with each project that you work on, because my first book was, my first short story was 15 to 20,000 words. My first novel was 45,000. My second novel was 55,000. My third was 70,000, and then my fourth was 80, and now the one I'm on now is like 105. So each time I have started writing, I've kind of a project. I try to expand it, and now that I've hit the 100,000 words, the next book I'm probably going to do a little bit less or something. I don't know, but we'll see. But also, this is the first story. The urban fantasy I'm currently writing is a series, and that's something I never thought I would do, because for me, I'm always been a sipper type of person. Like I like to dabble in things. I like to sip, and then I like to move on to the next. And that's kind of how the stories were with each of my books. In fact, I didn't even know what my first book was until today, when Hyrum told me, hey, this would be a great middle grade book. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you are absolutely correct. And this probably would be a good middle grade book. But that's for that story. And then the second story would probably be another, slightly older middle grade. But then the rest of my books are kind of young adult books. And that's another thing that you learn as you go. I would say that as you mature in your writing, you start honing in on what you like. And with the urban fantasy, that I've come to enjoy writing this one, and I think I'm going to turn this to at least maybe 2 to 3 books. I'm not sure, but it's all about the process. and this is where we learn, and that's why we're having this conversation.
Mhm. Mhm. I think, Hiram, tell us about how you've gone from being anti-outline to possibly enjoying your outlines,
Hmm.
because that's something that has also changed for me.
Okay, the problem with outlining is I've always thought it had to be like what I learned in high school. Because in high school, and I love spreadsheets, don't get me wrong, but they basically took a story and made you ruin it by putting it in a spreadsheet form. And you can't do that. A true story doesn't easily that's part of why I still haven't figured out the 7-point story structure of either of my published books, and I doubt I ever will. So what worked for me on this is that I was just trying to tell a story, but so it was going to be a short story. I thought I could make it a short story, but I kept coming up with new things, and so I kept adding and adding little tidbits. And on my second pass, I added even more, and then it's 8,000 words. And I had some people alpha reading it, and they're like, "This is great, but there are so many plot points that aren't being touched that you just had to leave because it's too short." And that was every single person was like, "This is not long enough for what you either have to cut a lot out, or you need to add a whole novel." And I decided to add the whole novel and so taking it, this is where the chaos still works, because I can take it, and in the very first scene there's 2 point of view characters, and the second point of view character is a girl she was going to be a second generation immigrant from New Persia. I have a lot of connections in the Persian community here in Utah. They do not like Iran, and we won't go into the details, but basically she's going to be a first generation. Then I was like, what if she's actually, so in the long version, what if she's actually from the region? And so that kind of chaos is why I can still consider it. I don't consider it a true outline, in that I'm not holding myself to it. If I have better ideas, I'm going to follow them. And so the chaos gremlins win, and I have ideas of where to go.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, Jen, do you write every day?
If I can, yeah. That's the goal.
I do too, if I can.
Yeah.
Before I had a job change, I would write every day, like when I was in a project. So if I was writing a book, I would focus on writing only 500 words a day. That's the only thing I really cared about, was hitting that goal, because to me, that it had to be. It was like going to the gym. It was something that I had to get done. And it sucks sometimes. I mean, sometimes I had long days. Now there's days I couldn't. I honestly just could not do it because I was either traveling or on the road, things of that nature. But I was very strict on that, and then it got to be a habit where I felt compelled to do. Since then, like I said, I've gotten taken a new job, and now my my hours are not my own anymore, and I can't do it every day, but I try to do many days as I can. And I think it's important because, like I said, some people can eat a whole meal at once. Me, I eat very small bites, and it might take me a month to finish that meal, but by golly, I'm going to finish it. It's kind of like the slow and steady, and, kind of like a train that keeps slow to get moving. But once it gets moving, it moves. But like I said, and that's the thing, we all have different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
Then you also get better at what you do too, because
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah, like Jen today, she's read over a short story that I had taken that was short, really short, and then I expanded it to be long enough for a writing competition. And she complimented the fact I had actual description in this one, because honestly, 6 months ago I still didn't know how to do description. So it's agony, but I learned. And so practice. And there are people that say, okay, when you learn a language, you make 1,000,000 mistakes before you're fluent. When you learn to write, you're going to need to write 1,000,000 words before you reach the point where you can be like, yes, I think I know what I'm doing. That doesn't necessarily mean you're good yet. I know I'm not, but I'm well over 1,000,000 words now, and I'm confident that I at least know enough to do the process. But find your way to that 1,000,000 words, by whatever means. Like the thing I used, I'm going to put it up, forthewords.com. Last year or 2 years ago when I first started, I had a lot of depression. It's been dealt with since, but the number 4, thewords.com. It's basically gamification. That is the process I used for not quite a year of my writing process. I wrote most of a book with forthewords.com. I also wrote most of my awful first million words with that app, and it gamified it. It made it so I could actually tolerate some of the things, and it helped break me out of my depression, to be honest, because I was doing something every day.
I'll be honest with you. I think your writing is really well done. And I will tell the story that I told. So when my friends tell me to, hey, would you mind reading this for me? I really hem and haw on that, because what if it's bad writing? And I don't.
It's valid.
That's why it's hard
That's
to
valid.
Arc reading is hard because you never know if they're going to be like. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and the funny thing is, before we started this podcast together, I didn't really know Hyrum, and I barely knew Jen. And so
we all took a
this
gamble
past
on
week,
each other.
I was like, I'm going to take a gamble and I'm going to read his stuff. And honestly, it was really good. It's not a genre that I would normally read, but it was really interesting. And I'm looking forward to the finished product. I can't talk. Good Lord. I think you've used your million words well, and I think it's really good.
Well, nice. I did write about bioengineered ferrets. There's nothing more fun than that.
Yeah, that's true.
No, that's the fun thing. Like Josh's first book, I've been reading it. It is not my genre. I do not actually care for paranormal, not the traditional paranormal, but I think I would have enjoyed it as a child. That's part of why I said it was good middle grade. I also didn't like things like Goosebumps. And I'm like, this would have been fun for me because I would have felt like I was reading something more grown up. Because Goosebumps always made me feel like I'm not a little kid. But yeah, so that's the fun. That is the other part of the process, is continuing to read and reading more broadly than you normally would.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, because I don't think any of us typically read any of the genres that the others write normally. Right. But
a real romance? I read your real romance. I'm like, dang, this is really good. And I actually, how did she make me care about these two dumb kids?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. But I'm reading romance now. Thanks, Jen.
You even went with the like.
By the way, Stacy, you're a bad friend. Bad friend.
He's reading one. I
don't even know.
Oh my gosh! But see, that's the thing, though, because now you can say that. Oh, well, now I can incorporate this kind of romance into my work, and it makes you a better writer because you can take and use other people's without using their stuff, obviously. But like you can say, oh, that's how you do that now. And so, yes, I agree. Reading is going to make you a much better writer.
Right.
Right. That's the only reason I think I can write as fast as I did is I read for 40 years before I started writing.
Yeah. One of the things that I struggled with when I wrote my first book was self-editing. I edited the crap out of my first draft, and it took me forever to finish writing it. And so I think that's another thing that you have to go into and understanding is that you're not good the first time.
And drafts are awful.
And stop editing as you go.
That was my biggest issue.
Caveat. Stop editing as you go unless you have a process that will keep you going forward.
Right.
The Chaos Gremlins insist I edit as I go, but not the traditional way. I write 2,000 words, I edit it, and then write 2,000 more, then I edit all of that, and then write 4,000 more, and it just keeps getting longer. So because I have found, now this is part of discovery writing, the process is I don't know what I'm writing until I'm pretty far into it.
Right.
And so then I figured it out by I'm in the middle slog. I got to go back. I got to just go back. I got to edit it so that it makes sense to me. I've taken 10,000 words, figured out where I was going, gone back, and then suddenly I'm at 40,000 words because I went back and edited. Because then I redrafted in my head. Now, that might kill you. That might kill your writing process. So don't do it if it's going to bog you down. If you're just going to cycle and cycle the same words, don't do it. But if you are doing it so that you can then just skim edit, because that's what I call it, I just skim edit, and then move on, it works.
So Kim, Ski Shack Madison says, howdy, writers. Well, hey, Kim, thank you so much for sharing your evening with us. If you have any questions, Well, we'll try to answer them.
Or sarcastic comments.
I was going to say, or comments, so I'll
Yeah.
take that.
Yeah. So
That's funny.
Kim's great. She's showed up on the show once or twice before, and I've known her since middle school. So
Ooh, so Kim has the juice. Come
No,
on,
no.
spill the tea.
no, not really. No, we went to middle school together. We didn't go to high school together.
Middle
so,
school's the worst.
Yeah, I was a nerd. I was.
Oh, he just tells on himself. Never mind.
I've been a late bloomer in my life. I'm still blooming. I'm still trying to bloom.
Well, that's the problem with growing up is that they expect you to decide what you want to do with your life, and I didn't know what I wanted to do till I turned 40 and became a writer.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, me too.
All three of us.
Because it took until I was 42, the magic number,
That's me.
that I realized that I could write. And I always here again. Well, maybe we should talk about that. Well, here we are. We're getting pretty long in the tooth with the show, but yeah. Kim, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim.
Kim is a good nerd.
Kim, by the way, for those that aren't here
Proudly
tonight,
nerd.
she says a good nerd, referring to me. Thank you. I know, I really was. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with who I am.
You make the majority of
It took me a long time not a long time, but after high school, I did a lot of different things that really taught me a lot about myself. And now honestly, I'm so grateful for that upbringing, because now I'm a person of many, many seasons, like I like guns. I like reading. I like painting. I like writing. I like, so I think it's being that way growing up has forced me to become more open-minded to a lot of different things.
Now do them all at the same time.
Yes. Can you pat your head and rub your stomach?
Truly, I think that the writing process is largely learning who you are.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I learned I am a junkie for chaos. Chaos gives me joy, and that's part. I didn't realize it, but that's part of why I'm a good field engineer, because field engineering is just going out in the field and figuring out how to solve whatever nonsense is going on, and swearing at the old engineers that designed it in the office and doesn't.
How could they do it this way? What were they thinking?
Why does this bolt not have access? Yeah.
Every time I'm in the engine compartment in my car, yes, it's like, why would they do it this way?
Because the British engineers, I'd never buy a British car again. Anyway, so you got to know who you are in order to sink deeply into your writing process. And I think that part of why a lot of older authors are able to just jump right in is we've done the hard work of figuring out who we are,
Right.
or the writing process finishes us.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. The whole writing process, it teaches you a lot about yourself, but you're also sharing a lot of yourself with everyone else, because all these stories are us. We're schizophrenic,
I don't know.
and so am I.
I think some of my characters are telling me what to do, and I don't think that's coming from inside my head.
Right. Well, it is 33 minutes, and it's been a good show. There's so much more to talk about, though. I mean, there's this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is 10% of 90% that we're not talking about. And, like the whole, not just the writing aspect, but then what do you do next after you write? What do you do? And we'll do that over future shows. Is there anything you want to kind of talk about now? Do you want to?
I think.
What do you guys want to do?
Shows. Yeah, definitely future shows, but I think hope. Let's end on hope, because you might be saying to yourself, "How could I possibly?" And I was saying that to myself too until I found a thing that worked. There's something out there. There are apps for that. I don't know what the app is necessarily for your thing, but if you need gamification, yeah, we mentioned one. If you need to just dive deeply into things and learn how to experience like world building, and then you find out you're too focused on world building and you're not writing, well, there's things for that too. So Kim asks a good question.
Yeah,
for someone that's never written a book before, where do you recommend I start? Short stories are a great place to start, and find the place where you come up with the weirdness. Like for me, it's when water is hitting me on the head. In the shower, I come up with more crazy ideas because I can't be busy. And
Right.
so I have literally got to be ready to yell to my wife, write this down, please.
Mm-hmm. So Kim, excuse me, I think you may have come into the show halfway, but before I talked about like what Hiram was saying, start off with a scene, start off and then finish that scene, and then write something else with a short story, finish that story, move on to something else, write it something a little bit longer, make it a little bit longer, and then complete that. And then that proves to you that, oh yeah, I can do it. Painting is my therapy. Okay. So she also says painting is my therapy, but I love to read. She loves to read books. I was the same way. I painted, and I really like to paint, but I got so frustrated because I'm a creative person. I like creating things. I was into photography, and I was trying to teach myself to oil paint and do all that stuff. But I got so frustrated with the cleanup aspect of painting, like the fumes, using the turpentine, all that stuff. So I just got so fed up with it that I'm like, I got to find something else. And writing was like the next step. And that's why I started doing that. But I would go back to that, and kind of like what Hiram was saying, some people go for walks. I have these ideas that I see something, I'm just like, what about that? And then also use the like she says right here. Kim says, do you remember Mom's has a ceramic shop? No, I did not know that. But you could use that in your story because now you know how a ceramic shop works. You know what's in a ceramic shop. I have no idea. So you could write all these stories about what's going on. Oh yeah. Okay. So she's doing a little free marketing herself. I paint laser cut wood door hangers now. Y'all check me out at Adorable Creations and Designs with a K. So
It's cute.
Yep.
Well,
all right.
I think that to sum up in my mind, the best play if you're stuck at the very beginning, one of the best things to do is look up writing prompts, because what you just said there with ceramic shop, throw on some dragons, and you've got a story.
I about spit out my tea. Yeah. Gotta watch out with you.
Well, with that,
gotta watch out with you.
Along those same lines, though, and he's being tongue in cheek here, but find people who will also inspire your creativity, because there are days where we just shoot off each other, right? We're just like constant. Hey, somebody has an idea, we're going to spark another one. We're going to spark this whole storyline. Next thing you know, somebody's written a short story about it. So find people who are going to inspire you to be creative as well.
Yes, join our Discord. We got to put that link in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely stay away from. If people are critical, don't share it with them.
Yeah.
Don't share it with them.
It doesn't matter if they're your spouse or your worst enemy. If they're critical, hopefully if they're a spouse, then you can work through that. But that's the point.
Let's hope your spouse isn't your worst enemy.
Enemies to lovers. Haven't you read that trope?
Not yet. I don't plan to unless you write one. I guess.
Got it. You did not throw us off topic, Kim. We love doing that. That was good. You asked.
Yes. It gives us things to talk about, so we appreciate you being here. All right, so we are at 38 minutes. I think this has been a good show. Is there anything else, any last minute things that you want to talk about?
I always want to talk about dragons, but I think we can do that later.
Right.
We can bring that up next time.
Kim says, oh, if I write something, I'm sending it to you, Jack. I've already talked about this. You got to go back. I probably won't read it because what if it's bad?
Listen to the beginning.
You got to listen to the beginning, all right?
That was a joke.
Listen, I think we've known each other for about a year, and he's just now reading some of our stuff. So just saying.
Yeah. Well, and then it's just time. I just don't have. I barely have enough time to get the stuff that I need to get done. But then reading is, and that's another thing. Sunday mornings, I'm actually starting to dedicate just to read.
Nice.
Because since my schedule's been kind of like all over the place, I've really had a hard time finding a dedicated time. Like usually I'm like, I'll read before I go to bed, but now I got to go to bed early because I got to wake up early. And so now I'm like, okay, Sunday mornings before everything else happens, that's the time to read anything. So I'm going to start catching up on that. All right, everyone, thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening. We will be back next week, and we look forward to seeing you. And until then, if you have any questions, be sure to reach out to us at authorsdilemma@gmail.com. And we will love to answer your questions. If you have any feedback for us, we love that too. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Adios.